Good day, my name is David Wyld, and this is part two of the lecture on Chapter 6 on Ethics and Social Responsibility from Connect Master Management 2.0. In this section, we're going to be talking about the ethical decision-making model. And let's first say that an ethical dilemma is a problem or situation for which a person must choose among alternative actions that in some cases may compromise an ethical principle. Although there are other models that provide guidance for working through the decision-making process, James Rest's ethical decision-making model is one of the more common and includes the following 4 steps that you see on your screen in Figure 1. First, people have to be aware of the situation to determine if one's actions might affect the welfare of others. Second, people have to form a judgment of what a moral course of action would be. Third, people have to select among competing value outcomes of the ideal and decide whether or not they are motivated to fulfill one's moral ideal. Finally, people have to behave in an ethical manner. So let's talk about the first step, moral awareness. As the first step in the process, moral awareness occurs when a person realizes his or her response to a given situation could affect the interest, welfare, or expectations of self or others. Failure to acknowledge moral awareness can result in decisions that fail to take into account potential issues that might emerge in decisions or actions. Socialization is a process by which individuals learn about values and traditions of some larger group. These are based on family values, company values, or societal values. And as individuals learn what types of issues are related to moral awareness, they are sensitized to be aware of those issues in the future, should they emerge. Issue framing refers to the way in which information about a problem is presented. Some issues may be framed as moral issues that involve benefit and harm to others, while other issues may be framed as non-moral in nature. The second step in the EDM model is making a moral judgment on a moral principle or ideal. There are many moral ideals that an individual may follow in this step, which involves the generation and assessment of options to deal with the situation raising moral awareness. The specific options that are generated are a function of the cognitive moral development of the individual, as well as age and experiences. Generally, most Americans are predominantly influenced by rules, laws, and others they live and work with, while few are influenced by higher levels of moral thought and ethical principles. The implication of this for management is that the rules and norms established as part of an organization's culture, as well as leadership and coworker behaviors enacted as part of that culture, become the driving force for moral judgments and ethical decision-making within the workplace. The third step in the EDM model is the intention or commitment to make a moral action versus some other competing interest. This is known as moral motivation. Individuals may generate multiple solutions to a moral situation. One or more of these may be viewed as moral, while others may not adhere to a particular moral principle. The decision to choose the moral option, choosing moral values over other values such as profit or other organizational interest, reflects the commitment to pursue the moral course of action. The final step of the EDM model is engaging in moral behavior. This adheres to the moral decision-making process. In many situations, this step may require the courage to adhere to ethics in the face of competing interest. It may require self-determination and self-efficacy in the ability to carry out the action successfully. The importance of this step is recognizing a situation and generating a moral course of action to affect a situation. Let's talk moral intensity. The steps in the ethical decision-making process involve a couple of key points. First, failure at any one step may result in unethical decisions. For example, lack of awareness may lead to not taking the remaining steps of the model into account. Even with the awareness, for a variety of reasons, individuals may vary in how they progress through the ethical decision-making process. One important factor in how this process unfolds is moral intensity. Moral intensity affects every component of the EDM model and refers to characteristics of the ethical issue in consideration. As moral intensity increases, individuals are more likely to recognize the potential issues that might affect themselves or others. Several factors impact the level of moral intensity: the magnitude of consequences, the degree of harm or good an individual may experience based on the decision maker's actions, the social consensus, which is the degree of agreement in a social group that the decision maker's potential actions are bad or good, the probability of effect, which is the probability the act will take place and whether it will cause harm or benefit, temporal immediacy, which is the length of time from the decision maker's action to the consequences experienced by others, proximity, how close the decision maker is to those affected by his or her actions, and finally the concentration of effect, the number of people affected by the decision maker's actions. Now let's talk bad apples and individual considerations. Within organizations, individual differences as well as the specific context provide a significant perspective that might influence how people act. When it comes to engaging in unethical behaviors, some have phrased this as a result of bad apples, the behavior of individuals, versus bad barrels, specific organizational situations. The bad apples perspective suggests that unethical behavior is a result of a couple of bad apples in the group. Alternatively, the bad barrels perspective suggests that the organizational context is the reason for unethical behavior. Organizational reward systems, corporate culture, and lack of enforcement of rules and procedures are several practices that have been identified as contributing to unethical behavior within organizations. The bad apples perspective is based on the idea that some people are more likely than others to behave ethically or unethically. Essentially, some characteristics of individuals predispose them to behave unethically. There are several factors that research suggests may contribute to this tendency. We focus on two of the more common considerations: the stage of someone's cognitive moral development and their locus of control. One key perspective that influences individuals' propensity to engage in ethical behavior is their stage of cognitive moral development, a framework developed by Lawrence Kohlberg. According to Kohlberg, there are 6 stages and 3 levels of cognitive moral development that individuals go through to hone their sense of moral reasoning. These can be seen in Table 2 on your screen. Considering the ethical decision-making model, the stage of development plays a critical role in the second stage of that model, making a moral judgment. The specific stage of development influences someone's ability to judge what is morally right and wrong and their expectation for that judgment. Next, let's talk about locus of control. This refers to the extent to which individuals feel they have control over events in their lives. A person who has an internal control orientation believes that outcomes are a result of one's efforts, while a person with an external control orientation views events in life as being beyond their control and based on fate, luck, or destiny. This ends part 2 of the lecture on Chapter 6.